Hello. Today we are going to read another chapter of Old Granny Fox by Thornton W. Burgess. Now yesterday when we left off, Reddy Fox was looking at Granny, who was acting very strangely on the banks of the big river. And here's a picture of Quacker, the wild duck from the north, looking at Granny Fox's antics as well. She is looking crazy. She's rolling over and over and over. Chapter 4. Quacker the Duck Grows Curious. Quote, "The most curious thing in the world is curiosity." Old Granny Fox. Old Granny Fox had never said a truer thing than that. It is curious, very curious, how sometimes curiosity will get the best of even the wisest and most sensible of people. Even old Granny Fox herself had been known to be led into trouble by it. We expect it from Peter the Rabbit, but Peter isn't a bit more curious than some others of whom we know and don't expect it. Now, Quacker the Wild Duck is the last one in the world that you would expect to be led into trouble by curiosity. Quacker had spent the summer in the far north with Honker the Goose. In fact, he had been born there. He had started for the faraway Southland at the same time as Honker, but when he had reached the big river, he had found plenty to eat and had decided to stay until he had to move on. The big river had frozen over everywhere except in this one place where the water was too swift to freeze, and there Quacker had remained. You see, he was a good diver, and on the bottom of the river he had found plenty to eat. No one could get him out there, unless it were Roughleg the Hawk, and if it were Roughleg, all he had to do was to dive and come up far away to laugh and make fun of Roughleg. The water couldn't get through his oily feathers, and so he didn't mind how cold it was. Now in his home in the far north, there had been so many dangers that Quacker had learned early to always be on the watch and to take the best care of himself. On his way down to the big river, he had been hunted by men with terrible guns, and he had learned all about them. In fact, he felt quite able to keep out of harm's way. He rather prided himself that there was no one smart enough to catch him. I suspect he thought he knew all there was to know, and in this respect, he was a good deal like Reddy Fox. That was because he was young. It is the way with young ducks and foxes, and with some other youngsters I know. When Quacker first saw Granny Fox on the little beach, he flirted his absurd little tail and smiled as he thought how she must wish she could catch him. But so far as he could see, Granny didn't take one look at him. "She doesn't know I'm out here at all," thought Quacker, and then suddenly he sat up very straight and looked with all his might. What under the sun was the matter with that fox? She was acting as if she had suddenly lost all her senses. Over and over she rolled. Around and around she spun, turning somersaults. She lay on her back and kicked her heels in the air. Never in his life had he ever seen anyone to act like that. There must be something the matter with her. Quacker began to get excited. He couldn't keep his eyes off old Granny Fox. He began to swim nearer and nearer. He wanted to see better. He quite forgot that she was a fox. She moved so fast that she was just a queer red spot on the beach. Whatever she was doing was very curious and very exciting. He swam nearer and nearer. The excitement was catching. All the time he drew nearer and nearer to the shore. He didn't have the least bit of fear. He was just curious. He wanted to see better. All the time Granny was cutting up her antics, she was watching Quacker, and though he didn't suspect it at all. As he swam nearer and nearer to the shore, Granny rolled and tumbled further and further back. At last, Quacker was close to the shore. If he kept on, he would be right on the land in a few minutes. And all the time he stared and stared. Not one thought of danger entered his head. You see, there was no room because it was so filled with curiosity. In a minute more, I'll have him, thought Granny, and she whirled faster and faster. And just then, something happened.